This day in sports history. It's March 21st, and on this day in 1970, it was the origin story of the Agony of Defeat. If you grew up in the 70s or the 80s and you were a sports fan, then you undoubtedly heard these words at some point.
The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat.
That's the voice of Jim McKay and part of the intro to a regular Saturday television staple, ABC's Wide World of Sports. Well, while the images shown for the thrill of victory changed periodically, from 1970 onward, the image shown for the Agony of Defeat was that of a ski jumper falling on the ramp and hurtling off the end of it and crashing to the ground, skis flying off in different directions. The event that became synonymous with the Agony of Defeat happened on this day in 1970. It was the International Ski Flying Championships in Oberstdorf, Germany, and the weather on this day started off decent. The ski jumper who would soon slide into infamy was a 22-year-old Slovenian named Vinko Bogataj. And while we remember the image of him flailing over the jump, there were indications earlier that this might not be a good day for him, or maybe he was just a little bit out of his league. Four-time U.S. Olympic ski jumper Art Devlin was covering the event that day for ABC, and the young Slovenian stuck out to him for all the wrong reasons.
And after the first round, and I saw young Vinko Bogataj jump, I said right then and there, this kid is nothing but an accident on the way to happen. And it sure happened.
Off too early. Holy cat, you see the wind on the tip of those skis? There he goes! Oh, that's a tough one, let me tell you. This is a dangerous hill.
But the weather turned awful between the first and the second round of jumps. The wind kicked up, visibility was low, snow had begun to fall, and the ski jump ramp was icy.
The youngster was inexperienced. He fell on his first jump.
A lot of speed in that track. Now, look out! Look at him go! Oh! Oh, baby.
What a terrible fall!
In an interview years later, Bogataj recounted how bad the weather was and how he found it hard to see much. He waited for about 20 minutes before he was granted permission to attempt his final jump of the day. Not too long after he started down, he realized the ice had made the ramp too fast, and he tried to lower his center of gravity and slow his descent. But then, snow grabbed one of his skis, causing him to lose his balance, and he sat back on his skis. Unable to stop, he launched off the ramp, flailed in the air, and tumbled through a catch fence. He suffered a few scrapes and a concussion. He wasn't gone from the sport long, though. He was back training 4 months later. ABC had sent camera crews to this event, and it wasn't long after Bogataj's accident that they began using the video clip in its opening montage. Most people didn't know his name, but everybody who ever watched that show at least knew who you were referencing. But Bogataj did not have a clue he was famous in America. It wasn't until 1981, when ABC celebrated the 20th anniversary of Wide World of Sports and brought Vinko Bogataj to the U.S., that he really began to understand just how famous he was here.
When I was told that I was being invited to ABC's Wide World of Sports 20th anniversary, I knew that I would not be invited if I weren't popular. But when I arrived and saw how many great athletes were there and how well they greeted me, well, I had never expected such a reaction. I was shocked.
During the celebratory gala dinner, Bogataj received the loudest ovation and was stunned when boxer Muhammad Ali walked over to him and asked for his autograph. Bogataj thought, that's gotta be a joke. Why would the internationally known Ali want the autograph of a Slovenian factory worker who was relatively unknown in his own country? And that's when he realized he had become iconic, and it's all because of what happened on this day 55 years ago. Vinko recently celebrated his 77th birthday and still lives in his hometown in Slovenia. So from the agony of defeat, we go to the rage of the spoiled brat. On this day in 1986, Jimmy Connors stormed off the court mid-match. It was the Lipton International Players Championships in Boca Raton, Florida, and Connors was in a semifinal match against Ivan Lendl. It had been a testy match between Connors and Lendl up to this point, and the two did not really like each other, going back about 4 years to an incident in the U.S. Open. Both players had received code violations in this match as it headed into the fifth set. Lendl was the top-ranked player in the world at this point, and he was up 4-2 and 30-love in the fifth when a line call went against Connors, and it sent him into a rage.
30-love. Connors wants a call. A lot of folks in the crowd want the call. He's not going to get it. Jeremy Shales is indicating he agrees with the line call.
He charged the umpire's chair, occupied by Jeremy Shales, protesting the call and that the ball should have been called out. After about 45 seconds, Connors resumed his argument and demanded that the supervisor of officials, Ken Farrar, and the tournament referee, Alan Mills, be brought courtside immediately.
Admit you're wrong. He's wrong. The ball was this far out. I'm not playing under those conditions. Get the supervisor out here. I'm not going to play. Get the referee out here and the supervisor. Call him out here. You're the one wasting my time.
Because Connors was arguing a judgment call, it was not an issue either of those gentlemen could fix. Shales advised a now seated Connors it would be in his best interest to continue play. Connors refused. He was assessed a point penalty and then penalized a game. Mills and Farrar finally arrived on the scene and echoed what Shales had told him. There was nothing that they could do.
Connors is going to pack his bags and that's it.
Connors walked off the court and defaulted the match to Lendl. His meltdown cost him $25,000 in fines and a 10-week suspension. Hey, real quick, you've heard me talk a lot about the Sterling Soap Company over the past few months, and if you haven't tried out their soaps, I get it. It's not easy changing up your routine. But let me just say, if you give them a try, I'm nearly 100% certain you will have zero regrets. They carry not only bar soap, but shave soap, liquid body soap, body lotions, beard balm, lip balm, and a lot more. Plus, there are myriad scents to choose from. Their products are made with natural ingredients and scented oils, and they are committed to being environmentally conscious. And I always get a handwritten note on my packing slip, so I know it's been checked before shipping, and it's a nice little human touch in a world that seems to be going away from that. Give Sterling Soap a try today at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 1940, Ben Hogan finally broke through and won his first PGA tournament, and he did it with a borrowed club. The last time I caught up with Hogan, he'd just had another disappointing loss to Byron Nelson down in Texas. Hogan had stormed off after losing in a playoff while Byron answered reporters' questions and assured the press that Ben would win soon. On this day, about a month after Byron said those words, the prophecy came true. When Ben and Byron arrived at Pinehurst to play in the North and South Championship, things were still a little chilly between them after a harsh comment from Hogan about Byron delivered in a live radio interview. As the two men gathered on the range before the tournament started, Nelson came bearing a gift. Byron had signed a nice new endorsement deal with McGregor Sporting Goods and had been given a couple of clubs to play with. Hogan also had a deal with McGregor, but not quite as lucrative, and he wasn't privy to the latest coming out of the factory. Nelson had 2 drivers in his bag and had found the one that he liked, so he offered the other one to Hogan. The club had an extra stiff shaft that most guys could not hit, but Hogan, with his powerful shoulders and forearms and precise ball striking, found the club to be a perfect match. He striped his drives down the middle of the fairway on the first day, hit greens, and putted with precision to take the first round lead with a 66. After the round, Ben offered Byron money to pay for the club, which Nelson refused. Byron insisted that he keep it as a gift. Hogan kept hitting fairways and greens and putts, and after putting out on 18 on this day, Hogan had broken the tournament scoring record by 2 shots and bested Sam Snead by 3 to win. After 8 years of grinding, pinching pennies to travel from event to event, coming close but never better than second best, the man who had about $30 to his name before the week started had finally won his first golf tournament. Even though he would go on to win major golf tournaments in his career, he called his win on this day the most special of his career.
I'd never won a tournament. I never had done that well before. And Pinehurst is a fine golf course. And I was so delighted that I could stay up there.
His win at Pinehurst No. 2 on this day opened the floodgates for him. He followed that win with 2 more in the following weeks, winning in Greensboro and again in Asheville. He would win a total of 5 tournaments that year and go on to top the money list. And it all started with a gifted club and a win on this day in 1940. On this day in 1987, the Providence Friars, coached by Rick Pitino, upset John Thompson and the Georgetown Hoyas to advance to the Final Four of the NCAA tournament. This was the first NCAA tournament that utilized the three-point shot, set at 19 feet 9 inches. Providence had used the three-pointer to great success that season. They stepped out beyond the arc in the first half in a little run in the last 6 minutes to create some distance from the Hoyas.
Darrell Wright for 3, and the first three-point basket of the game for the Friars. That is their normal offense.
Providence has had most of the lead the last 11 minutes of this first half. And a three-point shot by Darrell Wright, his second of the ball game. On his shoulder. Darrell Wright, another three-pointer. 3 for Darrell Wright on an afternoon in which Brooks and Donovan are not doing it offensively. And a 15-point bulge for Providence.
Darrell Wright hit all 4 of his three-point attempts, and Providence closed out the half with a 17-point lead. It was sort of surprising for the Friars to have such a large lead, though, with their leading scorer, Billy Donovan, scoring only 4 in the first 20 minutes. He'd averaged nearly 29 a game that season, but he was content to run the offense and get his points from the free throw line. He ended up with 20, but just 4 of those came from the floor. Georgetown could not put together any sort of a meaningful rally, and Providence won 88-73. Providence had been just the 4th best team in the Big East that year, but found themselves as a 9 seed in the national semifinals against another Big East team, Syracuse. It was Providence's first trip to the Final Four since 1973, but their Cinderella run ended in a loss to the Orange in the Louisiana Superdome a week later. On this day in 1980, President Jimmy Carter announced that the United States was officially boycotting the Summer Olympics and would not be sending any of its athletes to Moscow. The boycott was in protest of the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. Only 3 other countries joined the U.S. in boycotting the Games: Canada, West Germany, and Japan. Carter tried to convince Great Britain, France, Greece, and Australia to join, but failed to do so. There was also a push for the boycotting nations to send athletes under a neutral banner, but Carter threatened a revocation of a passport of any U.S. athlete who attempted to do that. Reaction to the decision was mixed. Athletes who had been training for years were obviously upset, but there was support for Carter's action taken against the oppressive and anti-democratic Russian government. The Soviets responded 4 years later by boycotting the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. Pirates in previous centuries wore gold or silver earrings for more than just decoration. Their earrings were worth enough to pay for a proper burial should their body wash up on a distant shore. Some were even engraved with their home ports in hopes to be returned home. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.